Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me for another Alfred Hitchcock Presents review. Today I will be talking about Season 2, Episode 33, A Man Greatly Beloved, starring Cedric Hardwicke as Mr. Anderson. And unfortunately, I did not love this episode. This is definitely a contender for worst episode of Season 2, in my opinion, and definitely one of the least enjoyable Alfred Hitchcock Presents episodes for me that I've seen up to this point. Cedric Hardwicke does what he can with the material he's given, and there's an okay twist at the end of the episode. Unfortunately, the episode really does nothing to set this twist up, and one of the other lead characters in this episode is very irritating, in my opinion, which I'll get to as I go through the episode. So we start with a child, Hildegard, and she's our narrator for the entire episode. And I have to say, really, I have nothing against children, but this kid is very annoying and irritating throughout this episode, and that is one of the main problems to go along with a few others in this episode. She introduces us to her parents, who aren't really that important to the story either. Eventually, we get introduced to Mr. Anderson, our other main character, and Hildegard is talking to him, and it seems like he's one of those older gentlemen who doesn't really want to have a lot of friends, wants people to mind their own business, things like that. We'll find out more about that as the episode goes on. So this kid is annoying him. As she's chatting with him, she comes over to visit. She's also annoying me at this point. Not a good sign. He's playing chess, and surprisingly, this kid Hildegard is good at chess, which was interesting. She's also very nosy, and she's asking John a lot of questions, like if he's married, things like that. Ultimately, this doesn't really lead anywhere. But what she's really trying to do is get John to agree to hold her father's church function on his property. I guess it's always been held there before he moved in. So at this point, she doesn't have much success. Then we're introduced to a Mrs. Whiteford, this lady who wants to be a medium. She wants to summon a girl named Naomi. So they chat, and once again, this doesn't really lead anywhere. There's not much point to this. And we're also introduced to her nephew, I believe it is, Clarence, who Hildegard likes. This character is basically here to give us exposition. He says that he thinks Mr. Anderson is a judge that he knew when they lived in Boston, I think it was, and we get to hear about some of the murder cases that were involved, which was okay, I guess. So at this point, we go back to Mr. Anderson, and he admits to Hildegard that he was this judge, but he wants Hildegard to keep this secret. For some reason, he doesn't want anyone to know. Why he wouldn't want anyone to be his judge is kind of strange, but we'll find out later why. So at this point, Hildegard says she'll keep his secret if he agrees to let her father have his outing on his property. So eventually he gives in and they have the function, but it's raining outside, so this has to take place in his house, which doesn't make Mr. Anderson too happy. Eventually we get Mrs. Whiteford performing some kind of seance there because the other entertainment doesn't show up. And at this point, Hildegard, being as annoying as ever, pretends that she's this Naomi girl under the table. This may be the single worst scene I've ever seen on Alfred Hitchcock Presents. I think it was supposed to be played for humor with this little girl talking like this Naomi person, but I just thought it was really, really bad. I actually cringed a little bit, I'm not going to lie. At this point, I just want the episode to end, honestly. So she uses this trick or plot device, whatever you want to call it, to give Mr. Anderson away and tell everyone he's a judge. So now all of a sudden everyone in the town loves this Mr. Anderson. He becomes a lot nicer. But eventually he passes away, as we're told in a very quick scene. But then we learn from Clarence, who comes back in to give us more exposition, that Mr. Anderson was really someone who killed his wife. And he took the judge's name that sentenced him, I guess as some kind of cover or something. But it turns out that Mr. Anderson did do some good in the end. And that's really it. That's the whole episode. Like, there's not even really a lot of plot in this episode when I think about it more. Not much really happens until the end of the episode. And like I said, I really found the child narrator to be very annoying in this episode. If you can tolerate the character of Hildegard, you may enjoy this episode a little more than I did, but there's really no suspense and not a lot really happens. So for me, A Man Greatly Beloved fails on most levels, and I'm going to give it a 1.5 out of 5. It does have an okay plot twist at the end, but that's about it. So 1.5 out of 5 for A Man Greatly Beloved, and as always, thank you very much for watching.